Hola chicos y chicas, soy señorita Schaefer y hoy vamos a hablar de subject pronouns. The big question that I want you to be thinking about as you watch this video and as you take notes is how do we replace names with subject pronouns in Spanish? And we're going to talk about what that means, but go ahead and write that question down please at the top of your notes and leave some space to answer it after you finish this video. So the first question that we need to answer is, what is a subject? And the subject of a sentence tells who is doing the action. So the verb is the action, and the subject tells who is doing the action. So if we look at these sentences below, what you're going to see here is these basic sentences, and let me get my highlighter color here. So Gregory listens to music. Gregory is the subject because he is the person listening to music. That's what you guys already know how to do, to use a person's name like that. But in the second sentence, we don't have a name. Instead, we have she, ella. She canta y baila. She sings and dances. She is the person doing the action. As we go through this video, what you're going to learn how to do is replace the name with the he, she, etc. So like I just mentioned, you can also use subject pronouns to tell who's doing an action. Subject pronouns replace people's names. So the subject is the person who's doing the action, and the subject pronoun is when you replace the Gregorio or Sara with he or she, él or ella. So in English, you can see what our subject pronouns are here. We have I, you, he or she, we, you, and they. And what we're going to learn today is to use these in Spanish. So I want you to go ahead and write down, make a chart like this. I want for you to go ahead and write these down, but what I want you to actually do is include usted in the bottom of your diagram here. So it should be yo in the first box, tú in the second box. Then we'll have usted, él y ella, nosotros, nosotras, vosotros, vosotras, and then ustedes, ellos, and ellas. What we're actually doing here is this side is singular and this side is plural. So you can see this side, there's only one person, and then on the right there are two people who are being talked about. But what we're going to do here is then we have first person when you're talking about yourself or a group that includes you. Second person where you're talking to someone, whether that be an individual or a group. And then third person is when you're talking about someone, he, she, or they. And what we're actually doing when we include ustedes and usted down here, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but this is the formal way to address somebody. And it's almost made more formal because you're talking to them in the third person in a way. So you're saying you, but you're kind of removing yourself and saying, I recognize that I'm not on the same level as you are. Like, you are formal. We're going to talk in a moment about what that means. The other thing that I want to point out is the vosotros box. You can put a star next to that. We only use vosotros in Spain. So I'm always going to show you guys the vosotros form, but you won't always have to know it. Like, you won't have to produce that on a quiz. Go ahead and make sure you have the Spanish here copied down. Then we're going to move on to some details on the next page. So, probably the most confusing thing that we're going to be working with here is how to say you. And we're going to be working with this in class and practicing as well. But we have 4 ways to say you. Tú, usted, ustedes, and vosotros. Now, tú is singular, so you're talking to one person, and it's informal or familiar. So you're talking to one person who is an informal relationship. This could be your family, your friends, people your age or younger, and anyone you call by their first name. So that's kind of a good way to figure it out. You'd use tú if you're talking to your little brother or to your friend Bob or to the little kid that you babysit named Anna. Whoever you talk to using their first name, that's somebody that you'll be safe to use tú with. Now I'm going to skip down really fast to vosotros, the fourth one here, because it's the other informal one, the one that you use with those same groups of people. However, like I mentioned on the last slide, vosotros is only used in Spain. So we're going to use that informally, but only in Spain. So I will always show that to you guys, but you will not be required to know it because most of the Spanish that you're going to hear in Florida is going to be Latin Spanish, not from Spain. So in Spain, we use vosotros when speaking to two or more people that you would call tú individually. And we talked about what that is. So like your two little siblings or two of your friends. Okay? In any other country besides Spain, we're going to use ustedes when we're talking to two or more people. So we're going to talk now about usted and ustedes. So let's skip up to number 2 here. We use usted with adults that we would address with a title, like señor, señora, profesor, etc. So usted also has an abbreviation. It's usually written UD, kind of like you would write MRS instead of writing out Mrs., or you'd write DR instead of writing out doctor. So for example, you would use usted with your friend's parents. You would use usted with your teacher. You should call me usted. You would use usted with your principal or with the President of the United States. Anybody who's a more formal relationship that you would use a title with. Okay, the last one, point 3 here that we're going to talk about is that in Latin America we use ustedes when talking to two or more people, no matter who they are, because we don't have the vosotros option. So ustedes is usually written like usted, UDS, abbreviated like usted would be. And we're going to use that when we're talking to any group of people. That's what we will mainly talk about in class. But remember, this is when you're talking to people, not about them. Go ahead and jot down whichever notes you feel like you need from this page. Then we're going to move on to the next one. I know that this is a little bit confusing. Please don't let it overwhelm you. We're going to talk about it in class as well. The other thing that we need to talk about as we're going over our subject pronouns is masculine versus feminine. So if a group is all males, we're going to use ellos, they, but as males. If a group is all females, we're going to use ellas. This makes sense based on what you guys know, because we have the O and the S, just like we would use adjectives. However, here's where the catch is. If a group is both males and females, we're going to use ellos. Even if we have just one guy and like 4 girls, we're still going to use ellos. Men are dominant in Spanish in this way, that if there's even one guy, you're going to use ellos. Alright, I know this video has had a lot of information. This is our very last slide. If you need to go back and review some of these slides, please feel free. And write down any questions, please, that you have so that we can go over them in class together. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is that you can combine a subject pronoun and a name to form a subject. So if we said Alejandro y yo means I. So in Spanish, if we said Alexander and I, that would be we, right? So the we is nosotros. We're going to use the masculine form because Alejandro is a guy. So even if yo is male or female, we still have to use the male form of nosotros. Carlos y ella. Carlos and she, right? That's going to be them. You're talking about 2 people. One of them is a guy, so we'll use the male form. That would be ellos. If we're talking about Pepe y tú, you and Pepe. Now, this one has 2 answers. Remember, Pepe is a guy, so we're going to use the ellos form. And in Spain, we would use vosotros, right? Because in English, this is going to be y'all. Informal, you and Pepe. So y'all, because at least one person in the group is someone that you're talking to. So Spain, vosotros is kind of the y'all form. So in Spain we would use vosotros, but in Latin America we would use ustedes. And you can abbreviate that UDS. And then finally, if we're talking about Lola y ella, Lola and she, so you're going to be talking about them, but they're both females. She and Lola. So that one's going to be ellas. If you want to go back to the beginning of this slide and just pause it, so my answers aren't here, you can quiz yourself and see how you do. So at the beginning of the video, we asked, how do we replace names with subject pronouns in Spanish? And this whole video has been about that. I know it's been a lot of information, but I want you to write down just a couple things here. First, I want you to make your little chart. So we're going to have yo, tú, usted, él, ella. Make sure you have that accent on L because otherwise it means the. Nosotros and nosotras. In Spain only, you can put an asterisk. We have vosotros and vosotras. And then lastly, we have ellos, ellas, and ustedes. The you, all, that's formal, or for anything in countries besides Spain. The second thing I want you to write down is remember men are dominant in Spanish. So if you have a group that has even one guy in it, you're going to need to use the mal form. And if you want to draw yourself a little picture like I did to remind yourself of that, feel free. And I would just circle the guy. And then the last thing that I would write down is you can combine a name and subject pronoun. Okay, like I said, we have a lot of information in this video. So if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and write them down right now so that you don't forget to ask about them in class. Thanks for listening, guys, and have a great evening.